Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for checking out my show, Coin Stories, where I get to hear from the leading voices in Bitcoin, financial markets and investing, political structures, philosophy, and more. Please make sure you're subscribed to the show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like the video so more people see it, and hit that notifications button so you don't miss out on any new content. This podcast does not provide financial advice. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So make sure to do your own research before making any investment decision and be aware of your risk tolerance. I'm able to produce this show thanks to my sponsors, and I'm very picky about who I choose to partner with. So I hope you take the time to listen to the ad reads throughout the show. All right, now to my first partner, where I buy my Bitcoin, Swan. I'm proud to partner with Swan because it is a Bitcoin-only company focused on helping people save for their future and self-custody their Bitcoin, not trade it. Swan offers a private client service, retirement planning, tax loss harvesting, and even home equity conversion. Swan is also committed to educating millions of future Bitcoiners through free educational resources and media projects. I actually use Swan to dollar cost average every day. I deposit a little bit every day that's equivalent to what I might spend on a meal because I actually read that dollar cost averaging daily ends up with a lower cost basis than weekly or bi-monthly at the end of a given year. Swan also produces my show, Hard Money, which reports on Bitcoin adoption and macro trends around the world. So make sure to subscribe to that as well. And to learn more and get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up, head to swanbitcoin.com/Natalie Brunell. All right, next up, Bitcoin Conference 2023. This is the ultimate Bitcoin event every year, and it's going to be held once again in Miami Beach, May 18th through the 20th. Last year, there were about 30,000 attendees, and it's hard to believe the scale until you see it in person. There are incredible speaking sessions featuring the world's biggest Bitcoin voices, networking events, games, parties, and of course, Soundfest. I actually credit my career transition to the Bitcoin conference because I went for the first time in 2021, and that's where I dropped my first episodes of Coin Stories, not expecting this to become my full-time job at all, but just hoping to meet Bitcoiners and find more guests for the show. I actually went up to people like Michael Saylor backstage with a business card, and that's how I got him to come on the show. So anything can happen there, especially if you dream of working in the industry. Ticket prices go up every month until May, so don't miss out. And for 10% off, use the code HODL at b.tc/conference. I'll see you there. Greg, I'm so excited to see you here in Jackson, Wyoming. I know it's your first time. How do you like it?
Yeah, it's really, really special. Nice crowd, nice snow.
So for those of you who don't know, Greg is an amazing skier. Share a little bit about it because you ski all over the world, really. Whistler.
Yeah,
here.
I might have been a good skier when I was young. Now I just have fun. Yesterday I couldn't breathe on the mountain because the altitude was...
it's hard up here.
Yeah, but the boys on Blue Collar Bitcoin were giving me a hard time because one of my buddies in Whistler got me what's called cliffed out, which is you ski into a situation where you can't get out of it because you're cliffed out. And I wasn't able to move my skis in a position that allowed me to escape the mountain or the blockage. So it got really scary. I had to take my skis off to move, and then I started sliding over the cliff. And
oh my gosh.
Anyway, as they say out here, if you don't know, don't go. Because if you don't know where you're going, you can get yourself cliffed out. So yeah, Seb Bunny, this is a shout out to you. That's my looking glass education buddy who cliffed me out in Whistler. But this is an epic mountain. I skied with Jeff Booth and Kelly, his wife Kelly, this morning.
Yeah, they're great too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
So many expert skiers in this group. I'm very, very impressed.
Amanda, certainly.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some Bitcoin and macro. I have a shirt that is really inspired by you.
Isn't it?
Right?
It's so sweet.
It's the Do the Math shirt.
And who are the guys that make that?
FOMO 21.
That's
Neil
right,
Jacobs.
FOMO 21.
Yeah.
So my daughter bought me the hat that says Do the Math for Father's Day.
Do people come up to you and say, what's that about?
I keep it on the shelf in my office, actually. So when people come into the office sometimes, but I've worn it around. A couple of people ask me about it, not too much.
I mean, it's simple math according to you.
It is simple math.
So what's going on with it? It's been a couple months since we last talked.
Okay.
I think it was in Amsterdam.
Okay.
We were talking about zombie banks.
I'm thinking things are breaking. You're watching Credit Suisse break in real time. Now, Credit Suisse is a systemically important financial institution, and there's a run on the bank. the wealth division is losing assets in magnificent fashion, and that's a very key profit driver for the bank. And it's essentially a run on the bank. And if CSFB gets in trouble, it's not just about CSFB, it's about all the other institutions that have exposure or counterparty risk.
What's CFSB?
Oh, sorry, Credit Suisse. I call it Credit Suisse for First Boston, because that's my old CSFB is in my days when I traded. That's how but now they're just down to Credit Suisse.
Okay.
Yeah, they bought First Boston, a big investment bank in New York, and then they were CSFB for the longest time, and now they pared down to CS.
Why that one as a first domino?
Because it's in big capital trouble. It's only got a $10 billion market cap for about $1 trillion of assets, which is ridiculously low. And they'll say, oh, well, we meet BIS capital standards. But the problem is BIS capital standards doesn't mark to market. Okay. I don't want to get too granular with you, but the reality is their market cap at 10 billion is really just a rounding error. And I'm not saying that they're insolvent, but I've seen enough banks in that situation that are insolvent. And that is very, very scary.
On stage yesterday, you talked about how you see Bitcoin as an insurance policy.
Yes.
You talk about the credit default swap. So for those that maybe aren't as familiar with that, why do you refer to it as insurance policy?
Okay. Thank you for the question. That's not grade 11 math when I start talking about credit default swaps. But I was a credit trader for 30 years. And I like to think of Bitcoin as an insurance policy on the Fiat Ponzi. Okay. Now, it's absolutely 100% certain that the Fiat Ponzi will fail. It's just a matter of when. And it's like owning fire insurance on your house. You don't ever want your house to burn down, but let's say you see on the other side of a valley a forest fire. Well, if the forest fire is approaching your house, you know that you're in trouble. You'd certainly want to own insurance. And you don't trade that insurance. You keep that insurance. It's not, and I like to think of Bitcoin as the same thing. It's insurance on the Fiat Ponzi. It's extremely cheap, and yet lots of people are inclined to buy and sell it. And I'm like, you don't sell your fire insurance on your house, much like you don't sell Bitcoin as your insurance policy on the Fiat Ponzi.
Well, right now, a lot of people are talking not only about commercial and traditional banks, but the crypto banks. And it seems like there's an effort by the current administration to choke off some of the on-ramps. So Silvergate now in the headlines. Can you share any thoughts or reaction on what's happening?
It's concerning. The reality is they are all small banks that can easily lose their position in the market. There's Silvergate, and I'm forgetting the second one. It's a little Signature, correct? It's a little larger. This is primarily for crypto on-ramps and stable coins. That for the buy and hodl self-custody Bitcoin person, we shouldn't think too much about it. But the reality is it impacts the ecosystem and, the broader crypto ecosystem. So yeah, it's like an FTX type of event that will impact the asset class.
I was really surprised because I was talking to someone just here at the Ski Summit who runs a company in the space, and they were debanked over the last several years. First it was, I think, Wells Fargo, then Chase.
Right.
And now they're with a state bank. Yeah. And the FDIC came to that state bank and said, no, you should not be, working with these companies. And then they fought back and they actually won. They said it was an overreach. But Caitlin Long as well, she was on my show, and she said we're in the midst of a debanking wave. And I think it could hurt Bitcoin adoption, at least in the short term, right?
Can it hurt Bitcoin adoption? It might actually promote Bitcoin adoption. But what it hurts is the larger institutions that need that on-ramp that's not like, buying and self-custodying Bitcoin. They need a custodian. They need the liquidity providers, custody. When you're managing a much larger pool of money, you need these on and off ramps.
What are you watching right now in the space? What are you most curious about? Because I don't know if you get this sentiment or this feeling, but when I talk to people in Bitcoin right now, it's almost as if we're in some sort of like a holding pattern, waiting for something to happen, waiting for a credit event, waiting for maybe the bull market or the pivot Do you feel that way, or what are you watching right now?
I try not to overthink it in terms of, defining a pivot. I certainly am watching CSFB. My dashboard is very small right now, meaning, when I traded, I would have a dashboard every morning you check. Where's the Dixie, which is the DXY, the strength of the US dollar? Where are US 10 years? Are banks up or down? Where is gold? And I think you can distill it into a couple of trades that you don't have to have a dashboard with 25 different things on it. But I already brought up one of them. Watch Credit Suisse. Watch CDS. And it's more difficult to watch credit default swaps on CS, Credit Suisse. But you can everyone can watch the stock price. Okay. So the stock price recently broke below $3 a share, which was like the line in the sand. And you throw out concerns like, we already know it's insolvent. It's just a question of, does the market take it to that point? So, I'm worried about US 10 years, which are hovering around 4%, and CS First Boston. And here's the big one, commercial mortgage-backed securities. Okay, I think that the subprime mortgage crisis in 2008, 2009, which basically drove the great financial crisis, I think this one is commercial mortgage-backed securities. So you've already seen Brookfield, one of Canada's largest office managers, default on a Los Angeles property. You've seen BlackRock default. And who are the people that own the mortgages? The banks. Or they've been securitized and sold out into the market. So commercial mortgage-backed securities, watch CMBS. So here are the three. US 10 years, CMBS, CS, Credit Suisse. I call them Credit Suisse First Boston because I'm an old fogey, but Credit Suisse.
Wow. A few moments ago, you brought up the Dixie. Yeah. Last year, it was really dollar up, everything else down. But this year, how have they been able to really keep the dollar down as much as they have? Like, there's been more liquidity, at least to start the year. Okay. Can you break that down for people that maybe have more of a general background?
Well, let's look at what the Dixie is. It's really it's a basket of 6 currencies that trade against the US dollar. Okay, the Canadian loonie is in there, but it's a really small. It's something like the Swiss franc, the Canadian loonie, but the 3 big ones are the euro and the two big ones are the euro and the Japanese yen. Okay, so what happens in something called an interest parity trade is the attractiveness of holding money in either of those other currencies. And that's measured by interest rate differentials. Okay, so as the US dollar was rising, it's because the USA was raising rates faster than anyone else in the world, which meant people wanted to put their money in US dollars to earn a higher interest rate, everything else being equal. And they could actually hedge using foreign exchange that rate back to their own currency and make money. So that caused demand for US dollars and selling of the other currencies. Well, what's happened since the Dixie topped out at about 114 is that the attractiveness of holding money in euro dollars and Japanese yen has increased because both of those countries are now catching up and their interest rates are going up. So people sell US dollars and buy those other 2 currencies, causing the DXY to go lower. And you said what they are doing. I mean, there's no one really controls the DXY except if you're a policymaker. But the US, a strengthening US dollar is actually good for the USA because it keeps a lid on inflation, right? If the USA has to import oil and other commodities that are priced in US dollars, well, it's good for them that their dollar is strong because the price of those things is fairly suppressed. But as the dollar weakens, those commodities go up in price, makes inflation increase in the US. The USA is so screwed, it's not funny. Okay, and not that I want it to be, but that is a matter of fact.
No, but it is interesting. I mean, a lot of people who didn't study this or work in, finance, they don't realize how all of it breaks down and how when the dollar strengthens, risk assets tend to sell off.
It's called the US dollar wrecking ball. Okay, so emerging markets get absolutely skewered.
Yeah. I mean, it's really sad to see what's happening in places like Turkey and Lebanon this year, South America. I mean, they're hyperinflation. We complain, right? But we have such privilege here.
You can print energy. The United States can print energy, right? You need to understand what a competitive advantage that is to print dollars to be able to buy oil that is priced in dollars.
Until we can't.
Well, then.
So I want to hear your thoughts. I don't know if I've ever asked you about sort of that geopolitical side, you know, BRICS forming, Russia wanting to evade sanctions, and countries essentially creating these parallel systems because they're saying, why would we even keep U.S. treasuries in reserves? You guys just keep printing away the value.
If you read Putin's speeches to his parliament, which it doesn't get a lot of airtime in the United States, he says exactly that.
Meanwhile, your president says the budget can balance itself.
Let's talk about a president with a brain. Putin, you can like him or not, he actually has a brain, versus Trudeau, who doesn't have a brain. So let's not talk about someone without a brain.
So how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think that the Western nations will get their act together and strategically acquire Bitcoin? Do you think maybe a country in Asia will acquire Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Like, how do you see this?
Well, it's game theory. So, I mean, we're already seeing it happen in the El Salvador. Now, the population of El Salvador is 6 million, and the GDP of El Salvador, if I remember correctly, is like 29 billion. I need you to understand that is 1/1000th of the size of the U.S. GDP. So, like, El Salvador and what they're doing is amazing, but probably the greater Miami area has a larger GDP than the entire country of El Salvador. But that doesn't mean that a larger country in South America can't follow El Salvador's lead. It also doesn't mean that a G7 country can't follow El Salvador's lead, but I don't know which one it'll be. But if I had to bet, and I said G7, but Russia's not in there, but let's say we call it a G8 or G9 grouping, which is China, Russia, and the rest of the G7, it will most likely be Russia, in my opinion, because Putin has got up and he has basically said, the U.S. froze my reserve asset, which is U.S. treasuries, and I don't like selling my valuable natural resource energy for a U.S. dollar that can be printed and frozen. So I'm going to price my valuable natural resource energy in something better. And he's floated the idea of gold. He's floated the idea of the yuan. That being said, he'll figure out that Bitcoin is actually the perfect. Because digital energy, as Saylor says, for natural resource energy, as an engineer, makes eminent sense as far as I'm concerned.
Speaking of energy, I know that you are doing a lot of work recently with Bitcoin mining and the different companies within the space. Do you want to share anything about that? Because I know that just in the last year, some have, we've seen some face major liquidity and solvency issues. There's always that FUD out there that, it uses too much energy. We should move to proof of stake. But Bitcoin mining, I think, could actually potentially be such an advantage in terms of economics here.
Well, it's not just an advantage in economics. It's actually an advantage in what's called load balancing for the grid. We have a situation in Canada where we have a nuclear reactor that at some times of the day, it has an excess. You don't change the base capacity of a nuclear reactor. That generator cannot power up and power down without causing a core meltdown. So it's producing the same amount of gigawatts at all times of day. But if there's no one taking those gigawatts, that power, it's like a shorting out of your fuse. So we have to find, and we don't have the transmission to transmit that power all over Canada.
So that's stranded energy.
It is. And in fact, we have to pay Americans, not sell the power cheaply. We pay Americans to take that power.
Wow.
Don't you think? And the member of parliament in that region is a pretty close friend of mine, as far as a Bitcoiner goes. And he gets it. Like, why shouldn't that nuclear power plant or facility be mining Bitcoin in to balance their load? Now, that's just one small part of it. The Bitcoin mining, this is a great conference we're at. And yes, I'm talking with a lot of people. We own some power assets in Canada. But here's my prediction. The Bitcoin miners of the future are going to be the current energy companies of today. They're going to be the utilities, the Duke Energies, the TEPCOs in Japan.
Shell is sponsoring the Bitcoin conference.
I didn't know that. So there you go. So those companies at the current Bitcoin mining is a very difficult business because they don't control their input costs, which is energy, and they don't control their output revenues, which is set by the market or the price of Bitcoin. So you have this business that quite honestly is a pretty difficult business. The future will be when you have a slice of the vertical. You, own the energy, whether it comes from natural gas, the molecule in the ground that goes to the power plant that generates electricity, mines Bitcoin, and then distributes it to the ecosystem. That is a friggin' good business.
Yeah.
That is the future.
It's really amazing that 30%, I believe, of the world's energy is stranded, and you could just
I'd guess it's
Bitcoin.
even more than that.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's...
I mean, how could you be against it, right? There's all these
'Cause you don't
policymakers, and we can't channel that energy anywhere.
There's a lot of people are doing good work. You know, shout out to Amanda and the Bitcoin Policy Institute and the work she does. But it's about education, like it always is.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we start to wrap up, maybe some fun questions. What are some great trips that you have planned for this year? Are you going to a couple more conferences? Going back to Portugal? I know you've done some good work in Madeira.
I just got. I was skiing with Jeff Booth this morning.
Yeah.
So he's tapped into some pretty good stuff.
Yes.
I'm telling you, there's a huge announcement coming up. I can't share it.
About a country?
Yes. About a conference in a country.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be really cool. But what am I doing? I'm doing Thank God for Bitcoin in Miami, and then right after that, the Bitcoin magazine or the big conference. There's a one in Canada. Shout out to the boys that are trying to do a conference in Canada. And then let me think. I'm doing hopefully Pacific Bitcoin again.
Oh, that one was great.
And then I'm doing Unconfiscatable with Tone Vase. I'm a huge fan of his. That was a great conference in Las Vegas the last time you did it. Yeah, so piecemeal here and there. There could be something going on in London, but I don't think they'll get that off the ground. That was the Edinburgh conference that you and I had so much fun at. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get out there, get in front of as many people as possible, spread the word. I was in Windsor, Ontario 2 weekends ago. Maybe it was even last weekend. I've sort of lost track of time. And we had only 25 or 30 people that attended from both sides of the border, but including this kid, Luke Broyles. I'm not sure if you know who he is, but he's getting a lot of airtime. And I met him in person. And you know what? It's good to get out there, meet new people. Shout out to Jason Lowry and everything he's done. And we'll go from there.
Well, look, you didn't drop an F-bomb. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. The audience sometimes loves that, the heated version of Foss.
I think that, yeah, the rant of an idiot. No, let's just, today was very pleasant. Thanks for having me, Natalie.
Thank you so much. We love your quotes. Do the math for the kids. I know how hard you work because you want to see a better future for your kids. So
leave the world in a better place than the world you were born into is my mantra. So thanks. Yeah, appreciate that, Nat.
Well said.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. Great work. Thanks.
It's time to hear these messages from my partners. First up, Fold. Fold is the best Bitcoin rewards debit card and shopping app in the world. You can earn Bitcoin on everything you purchase, from Amazon to groceries to sprucing up your wardrobe with Fold's Bitcoin cashback debit card. And you can win free Satoshis every day, or even play for the chance to win a whole Bitcoin by spinning the daily wheel and the purchase rewards wheel. I have an alarm set every day so I don't miss out on spinning the wheel and earning free sats. And it's also a great app to get someone that is totally new to Bitcoin. So if you want to join the fun, head to foldapp.com/Natalie and get 10,000 in free sats when you sign up. CrowdHealth, a Bitcoin alternative to health insurance. Health insurance costs can be sky high today, and you essentially send money every month to a massive corporation, the health insurance black hole, as I call it. And if you don't need any health care, you never see that money again, right? But if you do need to go to a doctor, you end up having to pay even more out of pocket, especially if you end up as one of the 20% of claims on average that aren't covered. With CrowdHealth, you pay a small monthly fee that goes into an account that you actually accrue over time and is yours to use or keep if you ever leave. You can even save that money in Bitcoin. CrowdHealth is all about community, and the community crowdfunds everyone's healthcare. So if something does happen or you have a doctor visit, CrowdHealth will negotiate down the medical bill much lower than what insurance would be, and then the community helps you cover it. And in return, you help others cover their needs. For more information, you can head to joincrowdhealth.com/Natalie. And if you use promo code Natalie, you get 6 months for $99. All right, next up, iTrustCapital. iTrustCapital lets you invest in Bitcoin for your retirement with the tax benefits of an IRA. You can defer taxes on gains using a crypto IRA, or with a Roth IRA, you can withdraw tax-free at retirement. And here are some important things to know given the recent crypto contagion. iTrust does not lend against client assets. iTrust accounts are also FDIC insured up to $250,000 US, and iTrust does not hold customer assets or money. Assets are actually held between Coinbase custody and a custody platform called Fireblocks. And Fireblocks, by the way, underlies pretty much the entire industry. So if you're doing retirement planning and considering adding Bitcoin to your IRA portfolio, you can sign up for an account and get a $100 bonus at itrust.capital/Natalie Brunell. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Again, hit like on the video and make sure that you have those notifications on so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And I would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions, feedback, guest requests, please email me at natalie@talkingbitcoin.com. Thanks so much.